One of the things I really enjoy is being on Roland Martin every Thursday. And Roland Martin really loves to talk about the media business, and in fact has several episodes on just that, the way the business of media really works. And in fact, I've got those links in the description under this video. And the other day, he sent me a text with regard to the state, really the state of black media in this country right now, which is desperate. I mean, the state of media in general is terrible. But when you look at specifically news, serious information, serious journalistic information, there is a huge problem in the black community. And in fact, Roland Martin to me easily has the biggest show for black news in the country right now. It's not even close, not even close. And it's funny because you have other platforms out there that are relevant. I mean, they're there, but they don't necessarily do reporting, coverage, and analysis of hard news. And you can see that there's an effort out there to try to blend entertainment and news, sort of an infotainment type of thing. There's a assumption, I think, that black people need to be entertained all the time before they'll pay attention to anything serious. I don't buy that for 1 second. And again, there's a chicken and egg issue there. Like, is it people wanting what because we're giving it to them, or is it because they're asking for it? Are the numbers and the traffic telling us that they're asking for it? The thing that makes me think about all this, of course, is the death of Joe Madison. And Joe Madison was always focused on serious topics, like serious topics, often life and death topics. His focus on Sudan being a great example. But there were other things as well. He went on a hunger strike because of the voting rights bill not getting passed in Congress. But when you look specifically at black media right now, certainly there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of things that are going on that are very interesting. I think Club Shay Shay is interesting. I think Breakfast Club is interesting. The question is though, who is doing hard news? Who's doing hard black news in the black community? Who's doing that? And I think that, as somebody who's worked in politics and in media, I've been a communications director on Capitol Hill, in Virginia. I've been somebody who's been in a lot of big news organizations at ABC News and USA Today. I kind of seen so much media and really what's going on. It's so obvious, but let's state it, even though it's Captain Obvious. Everybody is in a desperate hunt for clicks. And when everybody's in a desperate hunt for clicks, what that does is that prioritizes anything that will get someone to click the link. So that can be something, and typically it is, an entertainment related topic, but usually something scandalous and salacious is what it typically is. Whether or not that information is accurate, I think accuracy and the truth is taking a back seat to the clicks. I think the clicks have become more important to almost all of these news organizations than accuracy. And that's becoming hugely problematic. Um, Also, and you can kind of link this back to clicks as well. There's a penchant out there for, like, oh, let's have people do opinion and hot takes, instead of doing a deliberate investigative piece of journalism. One of the folks that was a client of mine, Justin Fairfax, who was the lieutenant governor of Virginia, in my view, was falsely accused of some craziness back in right at the moment when it looked like he was going to be governor of Virginia 5 years ago this month. And wow, isn't it that interesting, the timing, right? Right as it looks like he's going to be governor, all of a sudden he's accused of something in his 40s. It's just incredible. And the media didn't even really bother to look at the suspiciousness of that timing. But more interesting, even a big media platform, the Washington Post, the first thing they did was hot takes. And the first person that they did the hot takes with was Karen Tumulty, one of their columnists.
But I do think that Lieutenant Governor Fairfax failed that test early on when he immediately responded to these by claiming there are conspiracies, and
Karen Tumulty sat there and wrote not one but two articles, both of which were lit up in the comments. By the way, the comments were like, and I was really interested by that. I didn't notice it at first till weeks later, but the comments lit her up. The comments were just like, why are you writing this? And Karen Tumulty hadn't investigated anything. Karen Tumulty had not even called us on the phone. I had to call her. When I saw the second article come out, I called her. You're writing about something and you have no idea what you're talking about, and you haven't investigated anything. You haven't made one investigative phone call. And you're assuming that a violent, crazy crime was committed without knowing anything. And by the way, 20 years ago. I mean, so it's not even like something that you could easily investigate where we have video to pull and stuff like that. It's so long ago that that would require even a longer investigation because you got to go back to find out, is there phone records? Is there emails? Is there text? And that's going to take a few moments. And Tumulty comes out with 2 articles where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to say that I think I know that this definitely happened. And so just immediately assume that he's guilty, immediately, without any evidence, without any adjudication. We've been sitting here for 5 years now, nothing. How you know something is very suspicious is when it's supposed to be some serious allegation and yet the police are not interested. And the people making the allegation aren't interested in contacting the police. We don't have in our journalism people who are interested apparently in investigation. We have people who are interested in hot takes and their opinions and their feelings. And their hot takes and their feelings are taking over journalism. And why? Because it gets clicks, gets click-through rates better. The hot take, emotional opinion piece gets better traffic than a well-written factual news story. So which thing do you think is going to be platformed? In the Black journalism world, this is even worse because, there's not that many Black folks at the Washington Post or the New York Times in any key position that really matters on these types of subjects. And boy, did I find that out 5 years ago when the Northam thing happened. I mean, I was in meetings where I'm the only Black person sitting in the meeting, and that was not uncommon. And I'm walking through the Washington Post newsroom, and they're not really. What I find is I don't know that they're really interested in hearing the views of people that didn't grow up like they did and don't look like them. Like I think some of these papers, particularly the left-leaning ones, by the way, are not really interested in the views of anybody except their friends and people who say the same things and believe the same things that they do and went to the same schools that they did. So it's not a particularly diverse place, these newsrooms. It just isn't. And so you had that, but just to talk about Black media platforms for a second, if you look at news coverage and investigative coverage, and you look at TV One, doesn't have any news anymore. Roland Martin used to have a news show there, and they canceled it in 2017. Yeah, in 2017. Revolt has a weekly news show, and I don't know what that is and have never seen it, but apparently they have a weekly news show. Essence Magazine virtually has no news. Ebony has no news. Ebony, of course, almost went completely out of business a few years ago. And so the so-called papers of record, the Washington Post and the New York Times, get to sort of drive a lot of narratives because people are just copying their journalism. So that's why it's really important when I say that the lack of diversity there is a problem. So Essence virtually has no news. Blavity is mostly rewritten. The Griot has several writers and 2 daily 1-hour shows. So the Griot does have some news. And I think April Ryan is one of the hosts on that. Black Enterprise is a conference company, really. Again, the struggle to figure out how you make money in the news business is real. And so a lot of these news organizations have conferences and events to try to make up for that. As a lot of people know, Essence Fest is like one of the most profitable things, probably the most profitable thing about Essence Magazine, for example. With the death of Joe Madison and the fact that Tom Joyner is now retired, Tom Joyner retired in 2019, and so there's no daily, consistent news analysis because there isn't, and so you can't really say the Breakfast Club that does come on every day. That's really not news analysis, though entertaining. It's not news analysis. They are, of course, Black targeted and owned by Heart, but the Breakfast Club is sort of that infotainment type of model that we see so often. And now, Joe Madison not being there is huge in this moment, because there isn't anything duplicating that. And the only person, again, that comes close is Roland Martin. So he's putting 2 hours on a day of news every single day. And that is lacking. Black Press USA has let it be known every morning for 30 minutes with Stacey Brown, which I've been on, and I'm a writer for Black Press USA. It's 30 minutes. Doesn't get a whole lot of traffic, but it is at least an attempt to do a daily analysis of news. But that is the big thing that's missing. And these platforms have just got to get bigger and have to figure out a content strategy to get people watching, because that is what is needed to drive these narratives. And in this media environment, the moment where we do have the technology to do some of these things and we got to leverage it. So what I see in some of the bad reporting that I've watched over the last 5 years, and I think it's getting worse and worse, I think it's driven by these reporters trying to compete with people on Twitter who have no idea what they're talking about, that tweet something out, and now I'm trying to copy. I'm trying to compete with some airhead on Twitter, and it makes journalists at legacy organizations very, very insecure and uncomfortable when they see information on Twitter before they have a chance to really write it. But really what it's doing is it's killing investigation, because nobody wants to check facts out before putting things out, because they see it on Twitter, they see it someplace else. And now I feel like I got to erase that. I got to erase that Twitter post. It is the worst in terms of what it's meant for media, for accurate, truth-based, fact-based media coverage. It's been a disaster. With regard to analyzing the Jonathan Majors case, which is about to have another bit of news next week, the way his case was covered was strange. I think some of the news stories that that were written, that were, in my view, very, very suspect from a journalistic standpoint. They were interesting. You have a story from Rolling Stone with allegedly 40 people that they talked to, and not one of them is named. And then we sit through a trial for 2 weeks, and not one of the people, of the 40 people that they've talked to, shows up on the witness stand. I mean, I just find it to be, some of the things that we see in media is just, it's a devolution. You can see that this thing is starting to crack apart into something that, when you start to understand that you're not even getting your information from a media source that's a traditional media source, you get the same information from Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, that's a bad sign. That's a bad sign, because a lot of times what I find is that people who are on the ground at an event are more accurate than legacy media, and we're seeing that nationally and internationally sometimes. So at any rate, that's it. There's more to come on media analysis. So good luck.